Nice. Okay, so our next speaker is great. She's everywhere. Well, I feel like she's everywhere because every time I read an article about LLM students, her name is connected to it somehow. I think I was reading International Jurist magazine or something like that. And then there was an article by her, and then I was reading something else. I'm like, this is the same woman. She's everywhere. So I want you to welcome Toni Jaeger-Fine. She is committed to making herself and others the best we can be. She's the author of several books, including Becoming a Lawyer, Discovering and Defining Your Personal Persona, and that's by West Academic. And I know everyone here at George Mason has a West Academic account. She lectures on becoming a lawyer at law firms and other organizations in New York City and around the world. She's the principal of Jaeger. Am I saying Jaeger? Am I saying that right?
It's
Jaeger?
perfect. It's perfect, Angela. Thank you for not botching it.
Okay. I did live in Munich for 6 months, so I had to.
My wife is German. The Jaeger is my wife's name, and you have it perfect. So
okay. Okay, so you're the principal of Jaeger-Fine Consulting, and you offer consulting services, lectures, workshops, and one-to-one consultations on topics of professional identity and skills. So you're an assistant dean at Fordham. Are you on a sabbatical now?
No, I stepped down from being an assistant dean, and now I'm senior counselor.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, so assistant counselor, and you frequently are a speaker to delegations under the U.S. State Department's International Visitors Program. You lecture frequently on various topics relating to the U.S. legal system, and you're the author of American Legal Systems, a resource and reference guide, and an introduction to the Anglo-American system, which has been translated into Korean, Italian, and Portuguese. You travel extensively, and in fact, when I was trying to get you to do this, you were, I think, planning a trip to Mexico City. But you've lectured everywhere. Well, you know, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Croatia, Czech Republic, Egypt, Germany, Italy, Japan, Hungary, Kazakhstan, Mexico, the Netherlands, Nigeria, Peru, People's Republic of China, Romania, Spain, Switzerland, Taiwan, and Vietnam. You're a member of the New Lawyer Institute of the Bar Association of New York City, and you're a past chair of the section on postgraduate legal education, the section on international legal exchange, and the section on legal education for foreign lawyers of the Association of American Law Schools. You're also a founding member of the board of directors of Lawyers Without Borders, and you're the first American to serve on the board of the German American Lawyers Association. Toni Jaeger-Fine, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Angela. I was really delighted when you reached out, and I'm glad we were able to do it. My trip to Mexico was actually delayed because I broke my wrist. But it's healing well, and I'm very excited to be able to be with you and not have done a pre-recorded lecture, which is great, but I'd rather be here in person. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah. So can you just give us a bit of background? Like I see you as like this sort of expert on not only people becoming a lawyer, people who are already JDs, but you seem to be able to tap into foreign students that come to the US who then want to go on and become attorneys. But I just wanted to get an overview of how you got to that position. And then from there, you know, what is your advice to LLM students?
So that's great, Angela. So first I want to say that Rachel was amazing, and everything she said, I was like, yeah. And I'm probably the only person, or one of the only people on the call that doesn't hold an LLM, and I'm not pursuing currently an LLM, and I doubt I will. So I have a very different perspective, and I'm lacking that degree that you all have or will have. And that's, it's a tremendous thing for you guys that you're all doing LLMs, which is something I've never done. But you're right, Angela, that for about the last 30 years, the principal focus of my work at Fordham, before that I was at Cardozo, before that I was at NYU, has been working with international lawyers. And so international trained lawyers, they come here, whether they come from Jamaica. I haven't, you notice, Rachel, that wasn't on my list. So you and I are going to have to touch base later. I'd love to go to Jamaica on a business trip. So I have principally worked with international students like you who come from wherever, right? And many of those people want to become licensed in New York or California or elsewhere. Many of them want to stay in the US. Some of them are just using it for career advancement to go back home or for a break, a sabbatical. But really, the principal focus of my work over the past 30 years has been working with international students. Like many things, I fell into it. I started as an adjunct, actually, when I was living in DC. I practiced law in DC. I was an adjunct at George Washington in legal writing. And then I became a lawyering instructor at NYU. Lawyering is the first year skills course that they have for JD students. And then there was an opening in the global program and I jumped on it. And I jumped on it partly because I didn't know what else I was going to do. I definitely had enough of practice. I felt like practice was amazing, but I was really into education. I don't have the profile that would make me eligible for sort of a tenured track teaching position. But I wanted to continue teaching and I wanted to continue to work with students. And I had studied abroad myself as an undergraduate. So I really, really wanted to work in the global program. And that's how it all started. And I really, it's been, I'm semi-retired now, and it's been the greatest blessing of my life to work with international students. So let me tell you a little bit about the kind of advice that I give them. One picks up on something that Rachel said. So she started by saying, schools don't do OCI for international students, and that's basically right. You're on your own, right? And you also have a career path or a path from LLM to law firms that's really different from the JD path. JD path to law firms is really very structured, and it's kind of do this, do that. You guys kind of have to figure it out on your own, which is bad, but luckily you have Angela and her colleagues to help you with programs like this. But it's also good in that there's not one single path. So Rachel told you about her path. Carolina maybe will tell us about her path. There may be others of you that are going to tell us about their paths. So there's a little more diversity. And I want to pick up on something that Rachel said, which is networking. And, I know that Americans mystify networking like, oh, you have to learn to network, but we're not going to tell you the big secret. There's no big secret. It's exactly what Rachel described. It can be going to events, reaching out to people, asking who else they could connect with that might be able to help them. It's really, it's the most natural thing. If you think about what you did when you were a kindergarten student, right? You would go up to a little boy and you would say, oh, you like crayons? I like crayons. My name is Toni. What's your name? Oh, you like blocks? I like blocks. What's your name? It's finding commonality, finding common ground, whether that is someone that's been to the same law school, someone that's from the same country, someone that goes to the same church or mosque, someone that plays the same sport, someone that's a young mother, someone that is interested in M&A, whatever it is. It's finding some commonality. There's actually a goofy word for it, and it's called homophily. But what it's not is a job search strategy, meaning you go up to everyone you meet and say, I'd like to be hired. The most effective networking for me, and I think Rachel displayed this, is showing people what you got, showing people what you are. And the best network, a great strategy for LLM students, I think, is to reach out to people and ask how you can help them rather than how they can help you. So let me give you a story that it's a true story. Several years ago, I was running a program at the New York City Bar Association, and they have like no help. So I go in, there's a lot of chairs set up. You have no idea how many people are going to show up. And I had programs and I had to put them on the chairs for all the people, right? So while I was doing this, a lot of people were coming up to me and saying, oh, Toni, just a quick question. Do you have a minute? How can I get a job? Not a quick question, not a good time to be asking me. One woman came up, and I was clearly a little stressed, like, I had stuff to do. And one woman came up to me and said, hey, Toni, can I help you with that? And I was like, yeah, that's great. Thank you. Here's some of these. Let's chat while we do it. And that's the person I have a relationship with. So if you can first look close to you, reach out to people that you have some genuine interest in. So what I don't like, and I think most people are not really attracted to is, hi, I'm a foreign lawyer. I understand that you've worked with foreign lawyers. How can I get a job? But it's much better to say, hi, I'm a foreign lawyer and I saw your talk at such and such, or I also belong to the New Law Institute, or I also something, or I also do, I sort of, before my wrist, I did some rock climbing. Okay, I also do rock climbing. That's crazy. To sort of find some commonality and build a relationship, always by trying to help rather than instrumentalizing. I do want to say that I think a lot of people from different countries, and this is largely cultural, right? So someone who comes from Jamaica may be in a very different position from my wife who comes from Germany. Germans are kind of, I don't know if there are any Germans, I can't tell from the names, they're kind of, they don't really network, they don't really talk to people, they're kind of, and not every German is the same, and certainly not every Jamaican is the same, but there are a lot of cultural sort of nuances. I think that people feel like you have to have a really, really big personality to network, and I don't think that's true. I think you want to remain authentic to who you are, but I actually think that you have an advantage. Every lawyer in New York, every lawyer in DC, every lawyer in San Francisco, or wherever you may be, every lawyer meets a bunch of boring Americans like me. You come in with a different background, and that's fascinating. You're gonna, even if you're the most boring person in the world, which you're not, you're gonna be more interesting than the standard American like me, who's, everybody's met me a million times, right? And so you're gonna come with something interesting. But the most important thing about networking is not to be interesting, it's to be interested. And there's always things you can ask people about their practice area, about their path, about their firm, about all sorts of things. And so if you feel uncomfortable speaking about yourself, know that you don't have to speak about yourself. You can just speak about the other, and showing interest in another is a great way to make that person feel good and remember you fondly. I think also getting engaged in activities, like when I saw Angela is the president of this organization, that's a great thing to do, whether it's at your school, whether it's at a local bar, whether it's in an affinity-based bar. And I want to mention something because of some of the programs you mentioned before. Do you guys know, because I can only see a few of you, but there is something called the, I'm going to get the name wrong, the Black Big Law Pipeline, or the Big Law Black Pipeline. Do you know about this thing? Anyway, you should, and it's wonderful. And I was looking for diverse speakers, which is, as you know, unfortunately not very easy for a different program. And in particular, I was looking for Black women who were in big law, and I found that organization. So make sure you check them out. And Angela, if you're interested, I could touch base with you later and introduce you to someone who may be on the board. She's terrific. She's in DC, I think, at Covington Burling. And I don't want to guess her name right now, but I can find that for you and make that introduction. Get involved in stuff, whatever.
I can just put one plug that I'm actually on one of the boards for
Fantastic.
BBT.
So you already got a built-in contact there. Get involved in things that interest you. Committees on bar associations are a great way, but also building an organization and heading that organization, I think are great ways to be engaged and show that you're a player. I think I've talked enough, Angela, so I'll shut up and see if you want to pitch another question.
Sure. So, just hold on one second. All right. So, what can you tell us about clerkships and LLM students? Because that's one, I feel like they're the two biggest blind spots that I feel that we don't have as an LLM, and maybe there are more, but these are the ones that I've had like probably 20 something interviews since December. The blind spots that I'm having, one, I don't have trial or mooting experience, because when I was getting my LLB, I was going the solicitor route, and you would not, you wouldn't go that way. And then the other was, shoot, it was on the tip of my tongue and I forgot. Oh yeah, sorry, exposure to clerkships. Yeah. So, and then also in that, when I was interviewing for clerkships, I was asked, well, what's your trial, what's your trial experience as well? So I I mean, I know there's some alternate ways to get to get that sort of trial advocacy, like the Black Law Students Association has like a mooting thing, but I mean, and I could probably moot at school, but I have to really, really, really focus on it as a LLM student, like in a way that a JD student like wouldn't
It
have
just
to.
comes to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great question. It goes to, let me, before I answer those questions, there's so much packed in there. Let me say something quickly, which is, you guys are not JDs and you should not think of yourselves as JDs, and you should not think of really competing with JDs. You should think of yourselves as different, not better, not worse, different. As Rachel mentioned earlier, a lot of you come with experience, which JDs don't have. Like I was your standard JD. I went right out of college, the next three months later, I was in law school. I was as naive as could be. I had no worldly experience. I had really, it was pathetic. And so the only basis on which you might have hired me was sort of grades. And what's great about the LLMs is you come with language skills, you come with cultural competencies, you come with often experience in your home countries or even here. And so you're much more professionally developed, at least in law, than any JD will be. So there might be JDs who have had whole careers in other things, but they don't have experience in law for the most part. There's the occasional foreign JD who's done other stuff in her or his or their country, but generally not. So I would try to get away from comparing myself as a JD. I think you really compete in a very different market. You really do, as Rachel said, have to add value. So I think that my experience, Angela, is that most LLMs do not go into trial work. For several reasons. One is, although you wouldn't know it from the two of you who have spoken so far, language issues, right? But most of the LLMs that I work with are not native English speakers. And so that's an extra sort of deficit in the courtroom or challenge in the courtroom that you have to face. But I have known some LLMs who have gone on to be trial lawyers. I think if you want to be a trial lawyer, you're going to have to just sort of try to get that experience by hook or by crook, whether it's by interning with a trial lawyer or someone, or trying to get involved in some of the vise competitions, which are technically arbitration, but they're similar kinds of experiences. So I think in my experience, most international lawyers end up on a more transactional route than on a trial route. But if you do want to go the trial route, the sort of litigator route, just, by hook or by crook, get that experience to show that you have it. But I think you can also show it. Like I would hire either you, Angela, or you, Rachel, as a litigator, just talking to you for 5 minutes. You have what it takes. I can hear that right away. If you need the experience, you're going to need to find it. Clerkships are really difficult to come by. And because we're recording, I probably shouldn't say it, but because I'm old and semi-retired, I don't really care. Your law schools will never help you with clerkships because, again, it's a feature of their US News rankings. Whatever's going to happen with US News in the future, law schools still care, and they will still report the percentage or the number of JDs who go on to do clerkships, and they will not report the number of LLMs that go on and do clerkships. And so it's another one of those ways in which we LLMs are disadvantaged. And so I think that if at most schools that I've worked at or been to or known about, I think if you were to go to the clerkship person and ask for guidance, they would be, they would probably guide you, but not the way they would guide a JD, because they really want JDs in those positions, and because they think that LLMs don't really have a chance at getting it. But I have to say, Angela, when you wrote to me and said you had this opportunity, I was blown away, and I thought it was really amazing. I had this is not to be discouraging, but maybe I've had one student in 25 years that got a federal clerkship.
It's not federal. It's
still doesn't matter. Still doesn't matter. Just mentioning how difficult it is, right? And that was in a bankruptcy court, and I was so proud of him. I could have, shouted from the rooftops. But I think they're hard to get, and it's amazing that you got it. But you can also look at judicial internships or externships if your school has them. So while I haven't had a lot of students do clerkships, I have had a lot of students do internships and externships with judges. And that's a way to maybe fill that gap a little bit, Angela, fill that gap a little bit. But I do think it's amazing that you've got a clerkship lined up. And let me just say what's great about the clerkship you do have lined up. I didn't know it was a career clerkship. It doesn't matter. You're going to meet all the people who do that, who work in that field. You're going to learn about that field. And I think you would have what it takes to be marketable in that field after some time, and be able to really get a lot more opportunities in that field if you were to choose to leave that clerkship after a while.
Right. Well, it's in mass tort, so I do have a love of tort. I don't know if I have a love of mass tort, or I keep calling it torts. Torts. Mass torts.
Let me tell you though, Angela, I think if you've been involved in mass tort litigation, because I haven't worked in them really, well, I did a little bit 40 years ago, but if you can get through a mass tort litigation, you can get through any litigation. And so I think that knowledge and sort of experience that you're going to gain there, it may not be a linear path to something else, but what I would say if I were you in interviews is, yeah, well, I worked on mass torts. I mean, I can manage any litigation after doing that. And I think that's going to be really, really helpful.
Okay. Thank you so much. I literally could speak to you like all night.
We'll pick some other night and do that.
Yeah, but this advice has been, great. It's so good to get other perspectives on this, because I didn't know if it was I'm like, is it just me, or is career services just not really paying attention?
It's a problem everywhere. I mean, it's not to say, oh, don't worry about it. It's a problem everywhere, but it is a big problem. I've fought for it for years and years, and it's just a very, very big problem at most schools, if not all. Keep working on it, keep asking, keep demanding, but just so you know, you have very good company.
Yeah, okay, great.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.